Hi, Mr. Richards here. Today's lesson is on congruence and transformations. Our objectives are to identify congruency by using transformations and to identify transformations. Now, two figures are congruent if the second can be obtained from the first by a series of rotations, reflections, and/or translations. So determine if the two figures are congruent by using transformations. Explain your reasoning. Well, we have figure A and figure B. And what we can do here is try to visualize what could happen. Well, if I simply translate A onto B, I can't tell that it's congruent yet. If I were to reflect this object A, or a smaller version of it, say over a line, that would look something like this. That's still not like object B. But what if I rotated? What if I rotated A around a certain point? What would that look like? Well, if I were to rotate this, it would look something like this. Or, well, yeah. And that's in the same orientation now, the same direction as B. And then, so if I were to have a rotation, I would have it lined up. And then if I were to have a translation after that, I would be able to slide A on to B. So an answer could be, if we're writing in a complete sentence, a rotation followed by a translation would map figure A onto figure B. Next, determine if two figures are congruent by using transformations and explain your reasoning. Well, if I were to rotate this first shape 90 degrees, say counterclockwise, that would look something like this. If I were to rotate the second figure 180 degrees, so maybe the 3 on the bottom line up with the 3 on the bottom over here, it would look something like this. And so now that I have the 3 on the bottom lined up, we can be able to see, wait a minute, this piece is sticking off on the left side, this piece is sticking up in the middle. So our answer here would be the figures are not congruent because no transformations will match the figures up exactly. On page 535 of our textbook, it reads, if you have two congruent figures, you can determine the transformation or series of transformations that maps one figure onto the other by analyzing the orientation or relative position of the figures. Well, if we look into a translation, say we have this line A, B. Well, if we were to translate or slide figure AB into a different position, we should notice that, one, the length is the same, and second, the orientation is the same. The segments are still facing the same way for A and B, as well as A prime, B prime. What about reflections? Well, if we have our original AB And let's look at then a line of reflection here. This would become B's the equal distance away, A's an equal distance away. We can connect the two, and what do we notice? First, the length is still the same, but the orientation now is reversed. The segments are facing the opposite way. And lastly, now with rotations, we have our original AB again. And let's say we have a rotation point right around here. We could draw in a new AB right here. And again, what do we notice? Well, the length is still the same, and the orientation is not only reversed, but it is completely changed. The segments are facing a different way. And we can use this to try to identify transformations. The pattern below appears along the edge of a plate. What transformations could be used if the first figure is the pre-image and the second is the image? If we look at this first figure, which is the pre-image, and let's say we rotate this a little bit, we would have something that looks like that, if we were to rotate this. Then, if we were to translate it, it would map exactly. So what we can say here is we could use a rotation followed by a translation. So in this lesson, what you will be doing is looking at your transformations and seeing, first, can I use a transformation to determine whether or not two figures are congruent? And second, if I'm told that they are congruent, what transformations could I use to map the figures on top of each other? And that is it for this lesson on congruence and transformations. Good luck.